Our company sent an American manager to lead a team in Dublin. On his first day, he stood in the conference room and said, "Team, from now on, we'll start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. It's a great way to build focus and teamwork." The room went silent. Our Irish team lead finally said, "We're in Ireland. We don't do that here." He looked genuinely baffled. "Wait, really? But it's about freedom. Isn't that universal?" I was guiding a wine tour in Tuscany when an American man kept interrupting me. "Why don't you use computer-controlled fermentation like in Napa?" I explained that the traditional methods preserve the flavor. He shook his head and muttered, "Such a shame. You could make real money if you modernized the rest of the tour." He spent silently judging every barrel, scribbling notes like he was planning a corporate takeover. At a temple in Kyoto, an American tourist kept complaining about the shoes-off policy. "Why do we have to take our shoes off? Back home, people just wipe them. This is ridiculous." I explained it's a matter of respect and cleanliness. He looked around, bewildered. In the US, efficiency comes first. Tradition slows people down too much. I was on a canal tour in Amsterdam when a man asked, "Do people really live in these narrow houses, or are they just for tourists?" I explained that many are actual homes. He frowned. "Wow, Americans need skyscrapers to feel at home," he muttered, peering out the window like the buildings were a curiosity in a zoo. A couple in Morocco came to the market, and the man asked, "Can I pay in dollars?" "It's easier." The vendor smiled politely. "Sir, we use dirhams here." He shook his head in disbelief. "It's just easier if everyone used the same money." "Makes life simpler," he insisted, ignoring the vendor's gentle explanation about currency differences. At a cooking class in Bangkok, an American woman kept adding sugar to her curry. "This is how we like it in America," she said. "Yours is way too spicy." I tried explaining the importance of balancing flavors, but she waved me off. "You should really consider tourists' palates. Americans know best," she insisted, sprinkling more sugar with authority. I was on a train in Switzerland, and an American complained loudly about the Alps. "Kind of like Colorado but pointier," he said. "And the trains are way too quiet. Back home, you can hear them coming for miles. It's impressive." Passengers glanced at each other, quietly enjoying the serene scenery while he continued comparing every detail to America. An American tourist in Paris asked, "Why isn't everything in English? I can't read a thing." I explained translations are available, but most official signs are in French. He threw up his hands. "English is universal. Shouldn't you adapt for visitors?" He spent the rest of the day muttering about how Paris clearly doesn't value tourists. At a pub quiz in Liverpool, the category was World Capitals. An American confidently shouted, "The capital of Australia is Sydney." When the answer came back as Canberra, he argued, "No, Sydney has the Opera House. That has to be the capital. Your facts are wrong." The quizmaster sighed, and the rest of the pub tried not to laugh at his conviction. I was at a ski resort in the Alps when a man complained, "Why aren't the runs marked in English? How will tourists know?" I explained the signage follows local standards. "English is universal." "This is confusing," he said, tapping the map like it had personally failed him. On a tour of the Colosseum, an American asked, "Which corporation owns it now?" "Coca-Cola." I explained it's public heritage. He sighed dramatically. "No brand. Missed opportunity. Americans love sponsorships. You could monetize this place in no time." At a hotel in New Zealand, a guest slammed the counter. "Parking isn't free." In the US, hotels always include parking. I calmly explained local policy. He leaned forward, eyes wide. "You're just trying to rip off tourists. This would never happen in a Marriott in Ohio." I was guiding a temple in India when an American asked, "Why are there so many breaks?" Back home, we eat at our desks and keep working. I explained chai breaks help focus and morale. He just shook his head. Efficiency is key. In Silicon Valley, we don't waste time like this visiting the pyramids in Egypt, an American said. It's too close to the city. Should have been in the desert for effect, I explained. The city grew around the monuments over thousands of years. He frowned. That ruins the vibe, he muttered, clearly thinking someone had mismanaged history. A tourist in Copenhagen ordered a large coffee. The barista handed a standard cup. "No, this is way too small," he said. "Back home, a large is enormous. Can you just pour two together? Let me show you how we do it." He spent the next 10 minutes lecturing on proper American coffee sizes. In Greece, an American complained, "No air conditioning in the Parthenon." How do people survive? I explained it's historical preservation, not comfort-focused. Back home, even old buildings have modern amenities, she said, looking genuinely shocked at the lack of cooling. On a Spanish festival tour, a man asked, "Why isn't it in Madrid? That's where all the tourists are." I explained the festival has a specific historical origin. He crossed his arms. Tourists first, traditions second. They should really consider convenience. At a Swiss onsen, an American family treated it like a public pool. Kids splashed. Dad yelled, "Marco Polo." Staff asked them to keep quiet. The mother waved her off. They need to loosen up. A little American-style fun is good for them. They're so serious here all the time. On a beach in Portugal, a tourist asked, "Why aren't there lifeguards on every stretch?" I explained it's a small town with natural safety awareness. He frowned. Back home, rules exist for everything. How do people survive without supervision? At a French bakery, an American asked, "Can't you just ship croissants frozen like in the US?" I explained that fresh pastries are part of the tradition. Efficiency should be universal, he muttered, clearly unconvinced. Walking a tour in Prague, a man said, "Why is everything cobblestone?" Back home, paths are smooth. How do tourists walk? I explained the streets are historical. He shrugged. Americans prefer practicality. This is so inconvenient. On a train in Italy, an American complained, "Why isn't there a dining car?" In Amtrak, there's food everywhere. I explained European trains are different. "Ridiculous. Who travels without a bar car?" he said, as if the concept were physically impossible. At a historical site in Poland, an American asked, "Where's the gift shop?" I can't take proper pictures without souvenirs. I explained the focus is preservation. Back home, every landmark has one, he said, shaking his head like the locals were deliberately withholding fun. In Austria, a man complained, "Why aren't the ski lifts automated like in Colorado?" I explained the local systems are traditional. This would never fly in the US, he muttered, clearly judging the country's efficiency. At a university in Finland, an American student argued, "Why can't we pick our project teams like in the US? This is restrictive." I explained the system encourages collaboration. Back home, we get to choose. "Your way is controlling," she said, flabbergasted. In a Spanish vineyard, a man asked, "Do you have a mechanical grape press?" "Manual is inefficient." I told him it's traditional. "Efficiency is everything back home," he muttered, squinting at the slow-moving workers. At a market in Vietnam, an American asked, "Why aren't these prices fixed?" "Haggling is confusing." I explained it's cultural. In America, stores just have a price. "Simple," he said, clearly frustrated that negotiation is allowed. On a Florence museum tour, a tourist asked, "Which corporation sponsors this art?" I explained it's public. "No brand?" "Missed marketing opportunity," he muttered, as if public culture were an overlooked business venture. Hiking in Norway, an American said, "Why aren't there more signs?" Back home, trails are clearly labeled. I explained locals rely on natural markers. Americans do it better, he muttered, surveying the mountains like a dissatisfied engineer. In Kyoto, a man said, "Why are there no chairs in temples?" Back home, everything is for comfort. I explained the focus is contemplation. People need to sit. This is unthinkable, he said, shaking his head. On a train in France, a man said, "Why isn't it high speed like Amtrak?" I explained the route. Europe needs American efficiency, he said, clearly annoyed that things weren't instantly fast. At a festival in Belgium, an American asked, "Where are the hot dogs and hamburgers?" I explained it's a local celebration. Tourists want familiar food. You should adapt, he said, frowning at the lack of ketchup. On a boat tour in Greece, an American asked, "Why aren't life jackets mandatory?" In the US, rules exist for everything. I explained local safety standards. Back home, we do it better, he muttered, clearly unconvinced. In an Italian cafe, a man complained, "This espresso is tiny." Back home, a large is huge. I explained European sizes, child-sized. "Let me teach you real servings," he said, holding his little cup like it was a toy. At a historical site in Turkey, an American asked, "Where's the souvenir shop?" I can't take a proper photo without merchandise. I explained the focus is preservation. Back home, every landmark has one, he muttered, frustrated at the missing capitalism. Visiting a French chateau, an American asked, "Why aren't the gardens symmetrical?" In the US, we love symmetry. I explained historical design choices. Back home, perfection is expected, he said, clearly judging centuries of art. At a small restaurant in Lisbon, an American woman asked the waiter, "Can I get tap water but with ice?" He nodded and brought a glass. She frowned. "No, real ice, like half a cupful." The waiter explained Europeans don't usually drown their drinks in ice. She laughed awkwardly. "You guys really do everything warm, huh?" In a museum in Cairo, an American asked, "So when do they turn the pyramids off at night?" The guide blinked, confused. "They don't turn them off, sir. They're not lights." He nodded seriously. "Right, but you must have like switches for the spotlights." America loves presentation. At a hostel in Berlin, an American traveler asked another guest, "So what state are you from?" The guy replied, "I'm from Norway." She laughed. "Oh, right. I think I drove through there once, near Chicago." During a tour of the Great Wall, an American asked, "Does this wrap all the way around China?" The guide smiled politely. "No, it's a border wall, not a circle." He looked impressed. "Still, imagine the property value if it did. That'd be insane." In Venice, an American tourist stared at the canals and said, "So where do people park?" The gondolier smiled. "We don't have cars here." She looked concerned. "You mean you walk everywhere?" "That's so inefficient." At a Japanese convenience store, an American woman asked, "Where's the self-checkout?" The clerk pointed to the counter. "We help you here." She sighed. "You guys are really missing out on automation." During a heatwave in Rome, an American man walked into a pharmacy asking for air conditioning tablets. The pharmacist tilted her head. "Air tablets." The man explained he saw people online saying Italians use something like that. She realized he meant electrolyte tablets and burst out laughing. "We don't sell weather control," she said. Yet. At a Parisian bakery, an American asked for a croissant with extra butter. The baker looked genuinely offended. "Madame, it already is butter." She pointed at the golden layers like a proud artist. The American laughed and said, "Okay, but can you make it even more American?" The baker sighed, handed her a baguette, and said, Then start here. At a hotel in Prague, a man from Texas asked the receptionist if the outlets could handle his hairdryer. She replied, "Yes, sir, as long as it is not a weapon." He laughed, but she stayed serious. Later, when his hairdryer exploded the power in his room, he came downstairs sheepishly. She handed him a candle and said, "Told you." In Madrid, a woman visiting from California asked a waiter if the tapas portions were shareable. He smiled and said, "They are if you have friends." She laughed, but later realized the table next to her had 5 people sharing 10 dishes. She looked at her own 2 plates and whispered, "Guess I don't." At a market in Istanbul, a man asked the seller how much a small carpet cost. "Depends," the seller said. "Do you love it or just like it?" The tourist hesitated. "I like it." The seller grinned. "Then half price. If you loved it, I'd charge more." The tourist laughed. "That's actually fair." The seller nodded. "So is life."